Good evening. You are listening to Right on Campus, the UW-Eau Claire College Republican podcast. Good evening. You're listening to Right on Campus, the UW-Eau Claire College Republicans podcast. As always, I'm Ryan, the vice chair of the UWEC College Republicans. I'm here and joined with my co-host and working partner, Tatiana, the chair of the UWEC College Republicans. Tonight, we'll be discussing the rise in political violence in our country. So first, we're going to start by talking about Daniel Penny. So there was a lot of controversy over this situation in New York City between Daniel Penny and who was a former Marine, and then Jordan Neely, who was this 40-time arrested homeless man who was threatening passengers on the bus. So I wanted to take a second to just kind of talk about, what was going on, how did this transpire, where's the controversy coming from? Yeah. So this Jordan Neely was behaving very erratically and shouting threats to passengers on the subway, saying that he didn't care if he lived or he died, and that he wanted to go back to jail. Other passengers said that they felt threatened and that he was making personal threats against them. And Daniel Penny was a bystander to all of this, who is a former Marine. He served in the Marine Corps for 4 years. And he witnessed this happening, and so he intervened, and he stepped in and got into an altercation with Jordan Neely, when then he took Neely to the ground and put him in a restraint chokehold and held him down until responding officers could arrive. After responding officers arrived to the scene, Neely was not deceased yet. The responding officers refused to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on Neely because he was homeless, and they feared that they would contract diseases or anything else from him. And so Neely passed. And so then that's where this controversy comes in, is that then Daniel Penny was charged. He was charged. Let's see, what was he charged with here?
Originally it was second-degree murder.
Second-degree murder?
Yeah, and then the jury couldn't have like a conclusive answer on whether or not he was guilty, the judge made them decide on a lesser.
Yeah, and then they couldn't decide on that either.
Yep.
And then Penny was acquitted, and he's not guilty.
I'm not like a law person, but I didn't realize that was an option.
To what? Oh,
like the way that went down, where
it's pretty controversial, actually. You're not technically supposed. It doesn't happen often, and you're not really supposed to. It seems like the judge wanted to pinch the jury into getting a conviction on something. Exactly. But it was hung, and so they couldn't charge. But yeah, what do you think about this situation? What are your opinions on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Daniel Penny is a noble man. Yeah. And that's something I stand by, and I think he was protecting innocent bystanders from somebody who appeared to be, who not just appeared to be, but was, being violent. Yeah. Issuing threats, and somebody who in the past has been very violent. And so I think that, what he did was right. He didn't do anything wrong, that's for sure. And I think, this guy was a Marine, and to treat him like this is just sad. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really sick of the way that our cities are devolving into crime and squalor, and I'm really sick of it. And I don't think anything that Daniel Penny did was wrong. I think the bigger problem here is that Jordan Neely was arrested 40 times prior to this. Right. And then somehow, the media is going to paint him as this Michael Jackson impersonator, right. And now did you see Jordan Neely's family is now countersuing Daniel Penny civilly? Yeah. Okay. So your son Jordan Neely or whatever was on the street and was homeless. And then was charged 40 times, and you only show up now.
Now that you're in it for money.
Yeah, now that you have the opportunity to make some money, it just makes me sick. And I good on Daniel Penny for defending the innocents in
Yeah.
the subway, because this story could have gone a totally different way. Quite frankly, we wouldn't have heard about it because this happens every single day in Chicago, in Baltimore, in New York,
Yeah.
in cities across the country. There are crazy people who mug people on the subways, or worse, people get killed in the
Yeah.
crossfire of gang shootings.
And our justice system seems to fail us in keeping those people in prison.
Obviously, when you're arrested 40 times.
40 times is a lot.
I actually have, so four were alleged assaults.
Oh my gosh.
And then multiple instances of transit fraud, skipping the dial kind of thing.
Okay.
Criminal trespassing,
Ugh.
and then other offense, stealing alcohol and then open containers in public, typical kind of homeless behavior. And so I just, I don't think it's very good for our society to be painting Jordan Neely as, some innocent person when
exactly.
he was really threatening all these people on the subway.
Well, and the craziest part to me is the fact that they went for second-degree manslaughter. Because,
Yeah.
It wasn't, if anything, I think what they dropped it down to ended up being, involuntary or unknowingly causing a death or something, like accidental death type of thing. I literally just
they dropped it down to criminally negligent homicide.
Yes, that's
and
the
then the
technical
jury
term.
also was hung on that, and so criminally negligent.
I think
right?
that's reasonable. If they're going to try him for something, that would make the most sense.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I still don't think there's a case for it, but second degree manslaughter, that I just don't see that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. I think the worst part about this is that it's now sending a message to strong people in society who don't want to have to tolerate this stuff and don't want to watch anything devolve into something worse. It sends a message that if somebody is mugging people on the train and you intervene, the state is going to prosecute you.
Right.
They're going to bring charges against you, and they want to throw you behind bars and make you a political martyr. And that's a dangerous precedent to set. Gladly, Penny is an innocent man, and the courts upheld that.
Yeah, but that's not the case.
The fact that now he's had his entire image folded into this because he's become a national outcry.
Well, and if he hadn't been a national outcry, would the courts have actually gone through?
Yeah, who knows?
Would the outcome be the same? Or if he was somebody who didn't have as much money,
Right.
there's a lot of factors here. And I think that it's sad to know that our justice system so often does wrong.
Yeah.
But, on a more hopeful note, President Trump and J.D. Vance have both, been spending time with him, took him to the Navy Army game.
Army Navy game, yeah.
And, and definitely are celebrating, his victory here.
Yeah.
And, acknowledging his innocence. And I think it's important to see leadership show up in that way and to advocate for justice in a fair way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's important to raise people like this up, especially after they've been dragged through the mud so much through the trial period.
Especially our veterans.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, and for anybody who thinks that this is, Daniel Penny's a murderer and you're on this side of Jordan Neely, that's fine until you're put in a situation like this.
Yeah.
And I know that that's always tough talk and it's like, kind of cheap, but it is the truth. It's like the next time that you're in the city and want to go to a museum or you want to go anywhere and you're taking public transport and something happens, I think your opinion might change. I think your opinion might go from, oh, nobody should get involved to, please, someone help me before this person steals everything that I have on me or worse.
No, exactly. Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, and directing this a little bit more towards explicitly political violence. The internet has really been in a storm these past few weeks. It's totally been impossible to not see this. But the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was murdered in Midtown Manhattan on December 4th. And it was on video. It was by supposedly, which it looks like still, a lone assassin who shot him in the back execution style wearing a black hood and a black mask. And the internet has been in a total frenzy about this, and there have been very polar reactions. And quite interestingly, it's not necessarily on political lines. There's a lot of people across.
Pretty mixed.
Yeah, different political beliefs that
Which honestly I think is almost sadder.
It's very sad. And so, I don't know if I can run through this too. So obviously, Brian Thompson was shot and killed early in the morning. He was leaving his hotel, and that day he had to attend an investors meeting for United Healthcare Group. The shooting was captured on the CCTV footage. The assailant, Luigi Mangione, he used a suppressed 9mm Glock 19-esque firearm with multiple 3D printed components, which was part of the confusion. Was when we watched the CCTV footage, seemingly the gun jammed.
Yes,
like multiple times. And there was a lot of debate over whether he was using like a single shot, subsonic caliber pistol with a suppressor, or if it was just that he was a noob, or if it was that there was a malfunction. But then it has come out that because it was a ghost gun, and he didn't want the serial number to be tracked or anything, he made these parts himself. And they were faulty because of that.
Yeah. And his bullets also had engravings in them. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
but
what did they say?
They said deny, defend, depose, which is similar to, the kind of the way people look at insurance. Handlers, and it's delay, deny, defend. And so it was kind of an insult at an insurance company.
Yeah, I see. So obviously the suspect, the arrested man, his name is Luigi Mangione. He's a 26-year-old man. I think originally from Maryland, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. His family is actually very known in the Maryland area.
Oh, really?
They run like a senior living facility.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They also own like a golf course. He's like a rich kid.
Yeah, I know he's a rich kid. Yeah, he went to an Ivy League school.
Went to University of Pennsylvania, graduated valedictorian from his all-boys high school.
Dang, yeah.
Which is a competitive high school to get into.
Yeah.
The kid was the captain of the robotics club.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was on track to become an elite. He was going to become the Brian Thompson of the world. He was going to be leading something. And so to talk a little bit about him, his Twitter is still active. You can still go read his Twitter. He's got over 350,000 followers now. And he seemingly was a reader. He had like thousands of books on his Goodreads.
Yeah, his Goodreads is very filled with reviews and stuff.
Some of them were including books like the Ted Kaczynski Manifesto. And then I noticed on Twitter somebody said that they saw that he had read Mein Kampf in there as well, which I don't. Obviously, it doesn't really matter, but that's just speaking to the extremism kind of thing.
Well, and I know he was also on like some online chat rooms too.
Yeah.
And he talked, the months leading up to it, talked a lot about like losing control of his life, and how like using insurance companies as one of these reasons, like they control your life. And he thought, like video games were dangerous, social media was dangerous, pornography was dangerous because they all take away your ability to control your own life. I don't know. Just very interesting takes. I mean, I agree with some of them.
I do too. I was just about to say that. But it's kind of based there with a couple of them.
Yeah. So, but I think, he went on then, his big one was the healthcare industry. And he very much, hated the healthcare industry, and obviously took that out in person. And then he also cut off contact with his family right before the shooting.
So that's really interesting, is that he cut off contact not only with his family but all of his friends.
Yeah.
He lived in a like a youth, or maybe not youth. It's like a co-working kind of digital nomad thing. He went out to Hawaii and was big time surfer, and he supposedly broke his back out there in a surfing accident, and it was like debilitating. And there's a lot of like people who worked with him that have been trying to like uncover, like, maybe was it that he's being denied claims for that or what? But it as of right now, it doesn't totally look like that.
No, it does not look like that. And he also was not insured by United
No,
Health.
and so his mother died, which is another thought that people had, was like, okay, his mom. I don't totally remember what she had, but it was very excruciating. He wrote about how he would listen to her scream in pain, and he blames the healthcare system for this. But at the same time, she also wasn't insured by United, and you know, it's really interesting to me. All these details have come out. So another thing to consider is that he wrote on his Twitter and then also on his Goodreads. He has a lot of books about alternative therapeutics for pain, and so he kind of, a lot of his friends, people on his posts on his own Twitter and his Goodreads talk about using psychedelics, mushrooms, and
that's not going to be covered by the health insurance.
No, right. Ayahuasca is one that he mentioned as well, and that's, like anybody who knows Aaron Rodgers, he went and did this ayahuasca trip. It's this very potent psychedelic, and you know, psychedelics are one of these things that's like, some people do them and there's no effect, and some people do them and they lose their minds.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it really messes with their brain chemistry kind of thing. So some people have also been speculating, okay, did this guy go on these trips to try and, you know, fix the pain and just lose his mind in the process? I feel like that's kind of plausible. But yeah, I think...
I mean, all that being said, too, I think the bigger thing to look at even beyond him is the reaction.
Right, to take this back to the reaction.
And, you know, one thing that, you know, we talked about kind of how it all went down, but I think another important aspect of how it went down is how he eventually got caught was there was a customer at a McDonald's who saw him and went up to an employee and was like, hey, isn't that the guy who just shot that CEO? You know, and so obviously they called 911. And they... we're supposed to get there was like a $60,000 reward. Which I don't think they ever received.
There's controversy about this too, because I thought it was the employee that called 911. Is that what you said?
That's what, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry,
I misheard you. The employee called.
The customer told the employee who called 911.
Thanks. Okay, yeah. So this employee who calls 911 and reports it to emergency dispatch.
Yes.
So they had the $60,000 price tag on this, the bounty or whatever on him. They're trying to say that you can only get it if you report through the FBI tip line.
But the NYPD also supplied some of the money for that. So.
Really? Oh.
So the whole thing's like, really, guys?
Well, yeah, and this also happened in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So just across the border, like close state. Because I was a little thrown off when I first heard that. I was like, okay, what?
Yeah.
Some random person spots the shooter. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well, but now that McDonald's ended up having to put some security in place.
Really?
Because I don't know if that is... I assume it's not still in place. But I know shortly after, because of the threats they were receiving, I know the officers involved in the arrest are getting pretty severe threats.
Yeah.
Like, there's all this backlash and support for Luigi.
It's very confusing to me.
Which... I'm not getting. And you know, like you said, it's not one side of the aisle.
No.
It's a combined thing. And it's what sickens me, I think, the most is it's not just they're not just condoning violence, they're celebrating it.
Absolutely.
They're glorifying it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so sad and sickening to see.
You know, I sympathize with people who, you know, and myself even, like I had to go to the emergency room once for like a stomach thing or whatever, and the bill was stupid.
Oh,
like,
it is.
And it's annoying.
Stupid.
It is annoying. Like, and I get that, but to take this into your own hands and then celebrate, you know, an innocent person,
right,
like being killed in cold blood, that's wrong. This was an act of terrorism. Okay, terrorism is a politically motivated killing. Okay, and this is what he did. And so I think it's wrong to be celebrating terrorists. And I don't know. There's like people all online. You know, I mean, I saw on TikTok there was some guy made a song about it.
Yep.
It's just like
there's people saying like how attractive he is, and like
I've seen
going
that
on
too.
and on about that.
Yeah.
And then Etsy and Amazon even had merchandise come out, like you can get little totes that say "Mommy's Little Killer."
Wow.
With like a little CEO killer or something like that with like his face on it.
Yeah.
But there's also crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah. They didn't.
For all his legal fees.
He doesn't have any bail though, so they can't bail him out.
But they want to pay for his legal fees,
right? Which
his lawyers are all like, "What are we supposed to do with this?"
Yeah.
But they have raised $40,000. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
So, and one donor said, you know, when she donated, she said, "This quote is for my mother, a victim of the insurance industry. Mr. Manigone, thank you for your sacrifice. May others follow in your footsteps."
That's unbelievable.
"Of bravery and justice."
You know, and hey, listen, I get it. And the healthcare system can be and is in a lot of circumstances corrupt.
Yes.
And it leads to people not getting the care that they need. But this is going to be, you know, it's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow in, you know, our modern cushy society. But guess what, people? Everybody dies.
Yeah.
It's an inescapable fact of life. Every single person is going to die.
No,
whether that be, you know, you get cancer, whether that be you get hit in a car accident coming home from wherever, you know, the grocery store. But people die. And yes, we live in a society where we have wonderful medical resources that can prolong life in a lot of circumstances. But that's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
And another important thing to remember is, you know, we like to think that we ought to be giving people, you know, the best care, the best, you know, the free care, free health care. Why should people have to pay for it? You know, not to be that nerd, but the truth is they're scared. It's called scarcity.
Yeah.
There's only so many doctors. There's only so many nurses. There's only so many people who can come up with medications and life-saving drugs. And it's not, you can't, it's not going to, there will be no doctors. There will be no R&D and medication if there isn't some sort of compensation being involved for their scarce resources.
Exactly.
This is just life. And I don't know, it's just this like this young kind of naive notion that like, you know, my mom got sick and then, you know, she could have, if it was free, she could have lived 10 extra years. Well, first of all, you don't know that.
Yeah.
You know, and yes, it's unfortunate that, you know, she didn't or whatever. But I don't know. This is a difficult topic. And the thing that I find to be very ironic about this Luigi character is in his manifesto, he admits he doesn't understand the healthcare system.
No, exactly. Yeah, his manifesto is really interesting. And another thing that I noticed he says in it is, or actually it wasn't in his manifesto, he had a notebook that they found as well.
Right.
And he talks about how he thought about using a bomb.
Oh my God.
But decided not to because he didn't want to kill anyone who was innocent.
Oh, okay. Oh, shoot.
But he did kill an innocent man. You know, you are innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely.
In this country. And, you know, we can be mad at the healthcare system and say they're screwing people over. That one man is not responsible for the entire healthcare system in America.
No,
and
he didn't build it.
That man was a father. He had 2 sons. He was a husband to you know, to somebody, and like we don't just take matters into our own hands. I mean, when we start to see that in a society, that's when we start to see a society's downfall. And it just says a lot about our country and where our country's at, and it
for sure
it's scary and sad. And
you want to know something else? You know, United Healthcare is being investigated by the Department of Justice for unfair business practices. It's called the system working. It's called the system working.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense to me that we're celebrating the fact that this terrorist killed a man doing his job.
Yeah.
Because he's not necessarily disgruntled with something that company did directly to him, but just on the broad, you know, impact of society. Yeah. I think this sets an extraordinarily dangerous precedent that I don't think people are really going to be comfortable with if this were to continue. Like, this isn't very radical of a cause. The fact that
No.
healthcare is not cheap enough for you and you get to just go kill a CEO and then get celebrated by the entire country. Where does this stop? Like we could think of 100 different things. Like, would it be fairer for somebody who's poor and starving to go kill the CEO of a food manufacturer?
Right?
Because
should they lower their prices?
They should just lower their prices, shouldn't they? Shouldn't food just be free? Shouldn't I just go kill all the CEOs I disagree with? No, this is absurd.
Yeah.
And to celebrate and glorify this only invites more violence. And I think it's going to be incumbent on these people who are advocating for this that the next time that something like this happens that they may politically disagree with, I better not hear lock this guy up and don't give him bail and keep him out. Like this is dangerous and this is radicalization of the right wing, for example, if let's say something were to happen. And it's like, no, this is, yes, obviously it's wrong. Obviously lock him up. But this has been celebrated. And we've already seen our first copycat in Florida. That lady wrote deny, depose, defend, or whatever on an email to the Blue Cross Blue Shield people.
Oh yeah, all sorts of CEOs, health insurance CEOs are scared.
They're taking their online profiles down. They're delisting their addresses. They're taking their kids out of public schooling. I mean, it's a horrifying reality that people are having to live with now, because there are thousands of people who have now maybe never thought about being violent, but watched the reaction of the public to Luigi and thinking that, I mean, okay, so we talked about on the draft episode, young men. Young men are violent. They just are. The most violent people in the society are usually the young men.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, a lot of these terrorists, a lot of these shooters are all young men, okay? A big issue that young men are having nowadays is not feeling seen by women.
Yeah.
And there's less men aged 18 to 35 who have said that they've had a long-term relationship or a girlfriend than ever before in history. And now you imagine you're this disgruntled, very politically radical young man or something, and you look on Twitter and you see these beautiful women saying that this man is so hot for what he did. Look how attractive he is. What does that do to your mind? Like, I think that the implications of celebrating a terrorist in this way, it's going to be felt. And I think the only people to blame are those who have celebrated this, and you're gonna need to look in the mirror, because if you really think that this was some good thing, I think you need to reevaluate the moral framework that you're using, because it could just as easily have been you or your father.
No,
I
right?
mean, seriously. This guy took it into his own hands.
Think about the company that you work for, or that, someone in your family member works for. Any company can, end up in some shady business.
Has your dad or mom in a management position ever had to fire an employee
right?
who then maybe lost their house, couldn't pay their mortgage, couldn't put food on their kids' table? You think it's okay for them to come and kill your mom and dad? Absolutely not. That's psychotic.
No,
and
exactly.
So we need to stop being so chronically online people who don't care about the ramifications of what we support and what we don't support. And hey, let's have a conversation about how to fix this healthcare system.
Let's not turn to violence as our first reaction for everything.
Let's support legal efforts to change these things.
Yeah.
And if this Brian Thompson CEO guy, if it were to have come out in the DOJ report that he was criminally negligent and that he screwed people over, he should go to jail.
Oh, absolutely.
He absolutely should go to jail. He should at minimum be having to pay residuals, different situations. Some 26-year-old kid can't take the executioner's axe into their own hand. That's wrong. That's totally wrong and immoral.
Exactly. What kind of examples is this set for our kids?
People like to make the argument that video games glorifies violence. I don't know if I totally believe in that. I don't think that there's a total correlation between more violent video games being played to propensity to commit violent crime, but this certainly does.
Absolutely.
When you are celebrating terroristic actions, you're creating a martyr. You're creating this man who, maybe some person who, like I said earlier, maybe some kids watching their family go through, nasty situations, and it's one of the stages of grief is being pissed and anger and being mad and wanting to blame.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important thing to be grounded, through situations like this. And you can be pissed, and maybe your family is getting screwed, or maybe your loved one, or and that's legitimate. But that does not warrant. It's not someone else's fault.
Exactly.
Someone's not personally at fault for, the fact that, you got sick.
Exactly.
And it's not your fault either. And that's
No,
not what I'm
exactly.
trying to say. It's just that this is a fact of nature.
Exactly.
It's a fact of life. And
it happens.
It's just, it's really scares me, because it's like, where does this stop? Like, now that we've glorified that, okay, it's okay to go kill a healthcare CEO because, people have to pay a little bit too much for healthcare. Ugh.
I'm right there with you. And I think, violence is being celebrated. We see a rise in violence then. And, and it's going to start, encroaching more and more into our own lives personally.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be impacted by it personally.
Right.
And I think, it's a great segue into, what happened yesterday in Madison, very, very close to home for some of us. Some of our listeners are, likely from the area. And we had Abundant Life Christian School down in Madison, a non-denominational school. There was a second grader who called 911 and reported a school shooting. I mean, think about second grade. You're in second grade, you're calling 911 for a school shooting.
I think it'd be a good opportunity to invite those listening and those in the room to have a quick 5-second moment of silence for the lives lost.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and we saw one teacher and one student have been were killed. 2 students remain in critical condition. 1 teacher and 3 students have non-life-threatening injuries.
Okay.
And the shooter, Natalie Rupnow, also died en route to the hospital by suicide.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of information about this shooting.
Yeah.
And this, we're filming this the day after it occurred. So for those listening, but it looks like her social media, from what we do know, she had a fascination with the Columbine shooters.
Yeah. She wore the same T-shirt, didn't she?
Yeah, it looks like it. And just her social media accounts seem to kind of follow that stuff a lot.
Yeah.
And then there's a possible manifesto leak that it hasn't been confirmed, but it's looking like it's probably hers.
And if it is hers, what's it say?
It talks about eradicating all men.
Oh my goodness.
Babies to death, like babies to elderly,
wow.
like all men. She wants to create this like feminist society.
Oh boy.
And yeah, it's
how's that gonna work?
She's 15 years old.
Ugh,
she doesn't understand the world.
So sad.
And it's
these ones really hurt, especially because of how close it is.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel has family that lives in Madison.
Yeah, I'm from the Madison area.
You are from the Madison area.
Yeah. I know of the school. I know of the church that it's connected to.
Yeah. And
it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, my mom talked about sending my sister to a private school in Madison. And
oh my God.
Just in general, she didn't specify like, oh, like I want to send her to this school, but she said, at some point I might send her to a that's probably out the window at this point,
I don't blame her. But yeah, it's like I and I told you before we came on, but I have some cousins that are at a private school as well, private Christian school, and something that worries me. I mean, granted, she was supposedly a student at this school, right? But call back to that Presbyterian school shooting in Nashville, and that person was also a former student.
Yeah.
And it's just it scares me that the last 2 major newsworthy school shootings have been at Christian schools.
Yeah.
Now I know that most in history have happened at public schools, and it doesn't matter, but it frightens me that it's seemingly Christian schools have become a target in recent months and years, and that really frightens me. But with that being said, any school that experiences something like this, it's just horrific. And yeah, so this has also sparked a lot of controversy again, as it always does.
Yeah, no, exactly. So the question we always get when we see these events happen is why? Why are we seeing this rise in school shootings? Because I think for a long time, the right likes to say that, like, oh, there's not actually a rise in school shootings or mass shootings. Like, they're playing with the numbers. But at this point, I don't think that's the case. Like, time and time again, we have seen school shootings show up in the news. And I think to deny that is just false. Like, so why are we seeing this rise? And I mean, maybe we don't have the answer here, but it's just...
I would say our society is sick. Something's happened in the last 35 years. Something's changed. Maybe it's social media.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the fact that people are less religious. Maybe it's the fact that divorce rates have gone through the roof. Maybe it's the fact that parental presence in the child's life has gone through the floor. They don't care.
Do you think it could go back to, what we just talked about, the celebration of violence?
Exactly. The glorification of political violence. The platforming of school shooters. I'm sorry. And that's the problem, is I can sit and say Adam Lanza did Sandy Hook. I can tell you that Nicholas Cruz did Stoneman Douglas in Florida. I can tell you that Eric Harris did Columbine. I can now tell you that Natalie did this. Like, it's like the media, and granted, it's this bridge, right? Like, people deserve answers, and we need answers. And of course we're going to remember, major names and events. But I think it's just gross that we platform these school shooters in the way that we do. And, we make documentaries, and we make, in some cases, people are making movies. And it's just, it's really gross. And I think we'd all be served a little better if maybe we stopped glorifying these heinous acts. And it's, and I respect the fact that a lot of these people in these situations want privacy, and they don't want their children to be in the news or whatever. But I think society would be far better served if we did focus on the names and the faces of those who we lost, rather than the perpetrator of these disgustingly vicious acts that should have no quarter in our society. But yeah, I think something's changed. Something's really changed, and society. There's a lot of kids that have these mental health issues, and it bleeds into them thinking that they have no way out, and they might as well, go out in a blaze of glory, and it's just, it's totally misaligned. And I don't know. It's just, I'm speechless, and I will just say, I think this is one of these one of these scenarios where I might get a little sharp here, but I think the left should be absolutely ashamed of themselves for taking this as a gun control issue.
Absolutely.
Okay, people posting about the AR-15 right now need to educate themselves on the fact that the shooter took a handgun into the school. It wasn't an AR-15.
Exactly.
Okay, it was purchased legally. Right, you have the right to Second Amendment, the right to bear arms in this country for reasons that are completely unrelated to school shootings. Okay. If you're going to take this opportunity to force gun control legislation on the table, and they love to level the accusation. Republicans don't care, conservatives don't care. They only care about thoughts and prayers. No, I want to have a meaningful discussion about getting to the root of these issues. And to me, the root isn't the gun. When you look at gun ownership rates over the last 55 years, they've gone up slightly. They've gone up slightly. These, violent shootings, mass shootings, school shootings, they've gone up significantly.
Yes.
You know what else has gone up significantly? Mental health rates, issues with mental health rates.
But there's an attack on children in our society, and to name the big ones, there's, abortion. We're killing children in the womb. There's, the transitioning of children, hormones, or just indoctrination in general with that type of stuff. And there's just the mental health at large, and so I think, the list could go on and on too, but it's sad.
It is. I mean, it's just like, something, it's obviously not one factor that we can point to. Another thing that a lot of people like to talk about too is this, that a lot of these schools have one single resource officer, and that's what they're called, is a resource officer. A lot of cases they carry a firearm. Some cases they don't. I think it's interesting that we choose. We had one massive terror attack in 2001, and we essentially did away with the Fourth Amendment. We unreasonably search and seize every single person who wants to get on a plane because we just have to.
Yeah.
We just have to at this point. So my question is why hasn't it taken why has it taken so many school shootings for us to at least if conservatives are not willing to compromise on the Second Amendment, which I respect, and I fall into that camp, we need to then be advocating like very hard for increasing security at all schools, like mandating through the government, stop being afraid of small government conservatism, or large government conservatism. Go out there, make a rule that says every single school needs to have.
Would you include private schools?
Yeah, we got it. I mean, clearly.
Yeah.
Like
not just because the funding.
Let's subsidize it. I'm not someone who's like, well, anything that costs money can't be done. Like, if it's good and it's going to help us save these lives of these students, we gotta.
We're spending money on stupid things. We have the money.
We subsidize the freaking TSA in every airport, so why can't we do it at our schools?
No,
let's do it at public schools. Let's do it at private schools. And another thing to consider, too, with this is, there are so many veterans that come home from conflict, and they're jobless, and they struggle to get back into the workplace. Yeah. And that's for a myriad of reasons. They're trained killers, I mean, they're soldiers, and like they follow orders, and then they have to come back, and they got to adjust back to civilian life. But I know a lot of soldiers talk about purpose being a big issue. Yeah. When they come home, they go from serving their country with their brothers at war to working in an auto shop. Yeah, exactly. And so like that's a little difficult for someone who felt their purpose really being felt, feeling like they're defending their country, and then coming home and like, doing a cubicle job or something. Right. Like that's a difficult transition. I feel like if you could find a way to put ex-veterans, or I guess veterans, ex-military in schools, train them, screen them, figure out the right people.
Yeah, the screening would be the best.
Yeah, obviously you don't want some, PTSD issue going on, but give them a purpose. Let them protect our children. And
right, and I think you bring up a good point of like, we have more resources, I think, than we realize. We just don't always know how to utilize our resources. Yeah. We're so much about like conservation and like recycle, all those types of things, but we don't necessarily, it goes beyond just the environment, and there's people, like you said, who are looking for this type of job, even, former police officers who they just don't want to be, in, that extensive of a job, right? But they still want to serve, and they like the role they were in, just not to that extent. Like there's people who like this type of work. Yeah. And so I don't know. I think I see a need for it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a thought,
and it's I really don't honestly don't know if it's the best option, but no. Also, I think, we have to get to the root of the issue. We have to figure out our mental health in this country.
Yeah, that is the key.
And our kids are struggling, and we need to do something about it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, so we were talking earlier about Jordan Neely. And so, I feel like this kind of like laissez-faire take to criminals. So he's arrested 40 times. Like this all kind of comes out of the summer of love of 2020. Yeah. I think it's a good opportunity to kind of talk about the effect that these BLM riots kind of had on like political violence, excusing political violence. Yes. And yeah, I remember like it was yesterday. I was at work, and all of a sudden I'm looking at my phone, and my friends are posting that like, "Hey guys, don't go downtown Naperville. Like they're rioting." I'm like, what? Naperville? Like, dude, Naperville's like Naperville. Yeah, like suburbs.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. And so it's like, well, there was rioting in Aurora, there's rioting in Chicago. I mean, that's to be expected. Rioting across the country. Then all of a sudden it starts bleeding out. It's like when these cities like Minneapolis are allowed to just be completely burned to the ground, and people's private property is allowed to be decimated, destroyed, looted. all in the name of political injustice. I mean, this does not serve anyone. This doesn't do anyone any good.
It goes back to the whole Luigi thing. Like, you know, people are trying to take justice into their own hands.
Right.
And it's not your job.
Right.
And they're not taking justice in their own hands. They're committing revenge, and there's a difference between the two, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that people often just want to get back at someone when justice is somebody getting the punishment they deserve.
Absolutely. For the crime they committed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Revenge is taking out your anger on them for what they've done.
Right. And one thing that always confused me with the BLM riots is, I mean, how totally misplaced all of the anger was. Like, it'd be one thing if, like, I mean, and I would never advocate for this, and I would also strongly oppose it in the strongest ways possible. But, you know, let's say that BLM was cop-focused.
Yeah.
And they went and, like, spray-painted cop cars and targeted the police, okay?
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, they're pissed with the police. They're disgruntled with the cops. They're going to go after the cops.
Yes.
Totally wrong, and we should shut it down. But at least
But you understand
they're pointing
that.
right in the right direction. You go and loot your neighbor's corner store.
Right? Just setting an entire city on fire.
Just burn it all on fire. You know, you start flipping people, other random citizens' cars over, lighting them on fire. Stealing. I mean, like, there's people putting signs in their windows, please don't steal from me, I'm on your side. They don't care. They go in there and they steal anyway. It's like, what in the world is going on? How far off base can we get here? Like, it's just, it's totally deranged. And, you know, I think, remember Ferguson, the Ferguson effect, that, you know, that was kind of the first wave. And then this George Floyd effect is the second. You know, and I think it's important to say, you know, if you're someone who fears something like that, you're not wrong, because it's going to happen again.
Yeah, it
will happen again. We will mark my words that we have not seen the end of you know, political violence in the country. Yeah, just with that being said, it's just like there's no place for it, and when we celebrate the actions of the unjust, we invite more unjust action.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, moving on, even beyond, you know, BLM and moving kind of narrowing it in, you know, because BLM, I think, was a little close to home.
Yeah.
You know, Minneapolis, you know, even Chicago.
Right.
You know,
any
Kenosha.
Like, Kenosha was a big one, too.
You know, like,
Kyle
definitely.
Rittenhouse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think political violence, we even see not just the violence, but the hostility. And I think that's something that some of us have even encountered on our campus, you know, and, you know, we've talked about a lot about our tabling experiences. People don't like us. People get nasty with us, you know, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. People have told us to kill ourselves.
Yeah.
And, like, why is that somebody's knee-jerk reaction to seeing something they disagree with?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and like I actually, you know, people have asked me this a lot. Like, do you face violence on campus? And no, you know. So if you're a liberal on UW Eau Claire listening to this, I'm going to give you props right now. Don't make me change my words. Right. But so far, it's only been verbal. Okay.
Yes.
Some people have to deal with physical altercations, people throwing things at them and stuff, which is absolutely not okay. The verbal stuff is okay within reason. But yeah, I think it gets to a point where it's just like, you know, hey guys, you know, like if you start tolerating, if we as a society continue to tolerate the escalation of political violence through rhetoric and through action, it's going to be felt on a personal level. Because for me, it's like, you watch people excuse political violence and violent political rhetoric from the left to the right, and it makes me nervous. It's like, you know, I'm fully capable of handling myself, but it's like I worry about, we have a lot of young freshmen tabling, and, you know, or anybody who's out there. If you can't wear a MAGA hat in public, you can't wear a conservative leaning shirt in public. Depending on how conservative it is, without fearing that, you know, you're going to get into an altercation. And the opposite never happens. Never happens. You could wear your Kamala shirt wherever you want, all over the place, and you might get some nasty comments, but you're not going to get somebody who's going to fight you over it. Take your hat from your head,
right?
Like.
Well, I remember even the first time I put a pin on my backpack from our club, I was like terrified to put that one pin on my backpack. And, and like I've never really had any issues with them. I do remember I had a really funny experience last year or 2 years ago, maybe, in one of my math classes where I had the feet of a fetus at, I want to say 8 weeks, like the actual life size, just like a little pin on my backpack. And some girl in my class was like, "Oh, feet." And I was like, "Yeah." And I explained to her, I was like, "They're,
Unborn
life
child.
size of an unborn child." And she goes, "Oh, ew." And I'm like, so it's ew when it's a baby's, but not if they weren't a baby. Like the whole thing was just weird.
Yeah.
But so I get a lot of like weird judgments from my pins, but I never thankfully run into violence.
No, right. Right. Yeah. I mean, do you have any closing thoughts on political violence before we wrap up here?
I think, that with all this political violence, it can get overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it can feel like just this past weekend, especially yesterday with a school shooting, I was talking to one of my friends and I was telling him, I was like, what can I do? Like, I feel so helpless,
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very common feeling, especially for conservatives. But there are steps you can take, get involved in your political system, and learn how to debate, learn how to be civil, learn how to have conversation, and learn how our justice system works, and learn how to utilize that for change, And I think, it's going to take baby steps probably, but I think with those baby steps and with enough people doing it, I think we can reverse some of this political violence.
Oh, for sure.
And I hope and pray that we do.
Yeah.
And I hope and pray that we do it soon.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to Right on Campus. We post this podcast weekly where we talk about current events and life as a conservative on campus. If you'd like to learn more about UWEC College Republicans, join our meetings Monday nights in Centennial 1704 at 7 p.m. As previously mentioned, we will not be having any more meetings for the rest of the 2024 calendar year. Join us at our first meeting back on January 27th. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at UWEC College Republicans. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and favorite and share this podcast if you're listening on Spotify. Have a great night. Thank you for listening to Right on Campus. We post this podcast once a week where we talk about current events and life as a conservative on campus. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at UWEC College Republicans. Have a great night and see you next time.